For years, the UK wanted to work with China, but now it's waking up to the threat from the Chinese Communist Party, and it's taking a tougher stance. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Shelley Zhang, filling in for Chris Chappell, who's having afternoon tea. For years, the United Kingdom thought that working with the Chinese Communist Party was a good idea. It's kind of like how people used to think that smoking cigarettes could prevent coughing. Okay, the UK was hardly alone in thinking that working more closely with the Chinese regime was a good idea. The US had a similar policy for decades. But the UK was a little slower to catch on to what the Chinese Communist Party was doing. In this 2015 statement, the UK government claimed cooperation with China would open a golden era featuring enduring, inclusive, and win-win cooperation. This was around the same time the Obama administration was starting their pivot to Asia, as they finally realized the Chinese regime was not to be trusted. Meanwhile, in the UK, then Prime Minister David Cameron was cementing the golden era of win-win cooperation with Xi Jinping by having a pint down in the pub and taking a football selfie. Then the UK spent the next 7 years discovering that the golden era of win-win cooperation included having spies infiltrating the UK Parliament, exploiting scientific research for military gain, stealing intellectual property, and oppressing former British colony Hong Kong. Apparently, cigarettes do cause people to cough, and so does China. Despite this very bad track record, outgoing UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson had been pushing for pro-China policies for years. He unapologetically calls himself a Sinophile. It means he's fond of Chinese culture. Johnson calls himself this a lot. Okay, I also like Chinese culture. That's not an excuse for doing business with a regime that commits genocide. Plus, I don't really get how the whole Sinophile thing is a compliment. It's creepy. Would a weeaboo be proud of calling himself a Japanophile? Okay, probably. You know who else probably calls themselves Sinophiles? All the UK officials getting honey-trapped by beautiful Chinese women. They really love Chinese culture. That probably doesn't explain what's going on with Boris Johnson, though. He looks like he has to beat the ladies off with a weed whacker, which he then uses to comb his hair. In early 2020, Johnson even defied US President Donald Trump and gave Chinese company Huawei the green light to develop Britain's 5G network. This raised a lot of security concerns, especially since the US and the UK share so much intelligence. Johnson eventually reversed course and banned Huawei, though not immediately. Even after joining G7 leaders and an alliance with the US and Australia to counter China, Johnson still had a thing for China. Because who could turn away from Chinese investment? You know, Chinese investment. In February this year, Johnson said he still believes it's a good idea to forge closer economic ties with China. Because what's a little infiltration, exploitation, theft, and oppression between friends? Did I say friends? I meant money. But Boris Johnson will be stepping down as Prime Minister in September. And that means UK-China relations could be changing. I'll explain after the break. Welcome back. The UK government has had mixed feelings when it comes to working with China. On the one hand, China is run by an authoritarian regime that wants to control the world. On the other hand, money. And investments. During his tenure, former British Finance Minister Rishi Sunak sided with Prime Minister Boris Johnson in pushing hard for economic deals with China, despite the risks.
But it also means recognizing the links between our people and businesses, cooperating on global issues like health, aging, climate, and biodiversity, and realizing the potential of a fast-growing financial services market with total assets worth £40 trillion. And it is precisely because We are taking steps to protect our domestic economic resilience that we can pursue with confidence an economic relationship with China in a safe, mutually beneficial way without compromising our values or security.
Why are smart people such idiots? That's like saying that stripping naked and slathering yourself in honey and salmon is mutually beneficial for you and a bear. Rishi Sunak is now running for the leadership of the Conservative Party. If he wins, it means he would become prime minister to replace Boris Johnson. Chinese state-run media, the Global Times, called Sunak the one candidate with a pragmatic view of developing balanced ties with China. You've heard of weeaboos. China essentially thinks Sunak is a CCP-aboo. But to everybody's surprise, Sunak now seems to be changing his tune, calling China and the Chinese Communist Party the #1 threat to Britain and the world.
China is a threat to our national security. It's a threat to our economic security.
Sunak says that if he becomes prime minister, he'd close all 30 Confucius Institutes in the UK. He'd build a NATO-style international alliance to tackle Chinese cyber threats, counter Chinese industrial espionage and IP theft, prevent Chinese acquisitions of key British assets, and slap a kick me sign on Xi Jinping's back. Okay, he didn't actually say that, but a girl can dream. Sunak also pledged to lead the world in standing up to China's technological aggression by forcing British universities to disclose any foreign funding partnerships of more than £50,000. Money made from the Chinese Communist Party should weigh on people's consciences, and you can tell exactly how much it weighs in the UK since their money is in pounds. And if you're wondering why Sunak is suddenly going hard on China, well, I don't know for sure, but it might have something to do with his main opponent in the leadership election, Foreign Secretary Liz Truss. She's also been hard on China for years now, but in a way that the Chinese Communist Party really hates. During the leadership contest, she was reported to have told MPs she would formally recognize the Chinese government's actions in Xinjiang as genocide. I mean, really, really hates.
I'm very clear, after the appalling abuses in Xinjiang, after the terrible actions on Hong Kong, and the most recent outrage, which is China working with Russia and essentially backing them in the appalling war in Ukraine, we have to take a tougher stance. We have to learn from the mistakes we made of Europe becoming dependent on Russian oil and gas. We cannot allow that to happen with China, and freedom is a price worth paying.
Learning from your mistakes? Taking a moral stand? Choosing freedom over profit? Wow, she's never going to make it in politics. Truss has also said the UK should crack down on Chinese-owned companies like TikTok. And she said that the West should do more to make sure Taiwan can defend itself against China. The Chinese Communist Party obviously didn't like British politicians making what they're calling irresponsible remarks. According to Chinese state-run media, if it further worsens its ties with China, Britain will definitely suffer more. Yeah, if you don't strip naked and slather yourself in honey and salmon, you'll definitely suffer more than the hungry bear. So both of the main candidates running to lead the UK's Conservative Party are taking a tough stance on China, and it's part of a larger trend in the country. Laws have been tightened to make it harder for foreign firms, including those from China, to buy British businesses in sensitive sectors such as defense, energy, and transport. This includes blocking a Chinese company from acquiring smart camera technology from the University of Manchester. And according to the head of MI5, MI5 is now running 7 times as many investigations related to the activities of the Chinese Communist Party compared to 2018. Now, the political atmosphere is causing thousands of UK companies to cut ties with China. According to the Confederation of British Industries Director General, every company that I speak to at the moment is engaged in rethinking their supply chains because they anticipate that our politicians will inevitably accelerate toward a decoupled world from China. Okay, so British companies aren't pulling out of China because of the slave labor or the genocide or the threats of invading Taiwan. They're leaving because they anticipate UK politicians will make them leave. Not great, but still better than slathering themselves in honey and salmon. But the biggest question here is whether Sunak or Truss wins the leadership vote, will they actually follow through on standing up to the Chinese Communist Party? For example, The Times got a hold of some leaked documents that showed Rishi Sunak was trying to sign a new economic agreement with China this year that would deepen trade links between the two countries. Now, Sunak's spokesperson claims he deserves credit for canceling the deal, but I'm a little skeptical here. Meanwhile, UK companies reacted to the news of the leaked deal by buying more honey and salmon, just in case. And now it's time for me to answer a question from the fan of the show who supports China Uncensored on the crowdfunding website Patreon or the exclusive social media platform Locals. Joseph Fox asks on Patreon, "Hey, I always love your videos and I really enjoy the lack of ads you show." That's not on purpose, Joseph. It seems like China, now a world power, doesn't play by the international standards. Why haven't countries done more than give mild complaints? It would seem like wealthy democracies would be okay with politicians divesting from China and into more emerging democracies. Well, Joseph, it really comes down to money. 20 years ago, when China was still an emerging market, companies around the world were drooling over getting a piece of it. And wealthy countries managed to pump so much money into the Chinese regime that we all became pretty dependent on China economically. The good news is that some countries are finally wising up and doing what you suggest, which is now being called friendshoring, the idea of pulling out of authoritarian regimes like China and working with other countries that respect international law. But even now, some experts say friendshoring is a bad idea, especially because China will try to retaliate against countries that do it. But if the rest of the world doesn't stop giving the Chinese Communist Party economic power, this is a problem that never gets solved and only gets worse. But there's another issue that's more fundamental too. For years, liberal democracies refused to see what the Chinese Communist Party really is, an expansionist authoritarian regime. They wanted to believe that China was just a normal country that, deep down inside wanted to follow the rules as long as other countries gave them the chance. Even now, as the Chinese Communist Party commits genocide, there are Western officials who act like we just need to convince the party to stop undermining the international rules-based order. Can't we all just get along? No, not according to the Chinese regime. And if liberal democracies don't see that clearly, we're all in trouble. Thanks for your question, Joseph Fox, and for supporting China Uncensored on Patreon. We couldn't do this show without you, because China Uncensored is supported mainly by viewers like you. So visit patreon.com/China Uncensored and contribute $1 or more per episode. We rely on your support to help us keep making episodes like this. Once again, I'm Shelley Zhang. Thanks for watching China Uncensored.